Today we're gonna make purple basil and mint layer soap. Actually, it's not purple.
No, it's just basil mint soap.
Yeah. We don't really have the stuff that makes it purple, and we don't have purple basil, so we're gonna use the freshly grown green basil that we've grown here.
Oh, there you go. So the ingredients that we're using today that are part of this recipe are the basil leaves, which are not here.
Yes.
And those are fresh, picked this morning off of our basil plants. You can use store-bought basil leaves, that's fine. But I think they have to be fresh. The book doesn't really say why, but I assume there's a reason. I think it's just to color your soap. So you need the chlorophyll in the leaves to make your soap green. We're using French green clay. This also will help color the soap green. We don't have purple clay. That would have made the other side of the soap purple. So we're just going to use extra green clay. They're the same, so it doesn't matter.
Wait, are we gonna have a fully green bar then?
No, we're gonna have a half and a half. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna color half the soap with the extra green color. So actually it might look a little bit ombre.
Ooh,
yeah.
Ombre.
So it'll be a light green and a darker green is what we're going for. So we're gonna see whether or not that actually works out for us. We have distilled water.
We actually don't, and that thing's going right now.
So we don't actually have enough distilled water for the recipe, and because it's the long weekend, we can't find any anywhere. So we're gonna try out using Brita water that's been boiled. So we'll see how that goes.
So that noise that you're probably hearing now is that sound going off when we're videoing. So
It's realism. Realism.
This might get cut.
And then we have our lye crystals here, which is normal. So we've just talked about our, we have our coconut oil, which is here. Again, we ran out of our normal coconut oil, so we had to go and get some more. The recipe calls for cocoa butter, but cocoa butter is really expensive, so we're using cocoa butter instead. You don't have to adjust your lye amounts. Cocoa butter is the same fat percentage as coconut butter.
Then we have our olive oil. I'm not sure if you mentioned that one already. And then we have our safflower oil.
Sunflower oil.
Sunflower oil, she's correct.
And our essential oils today are peppermint and basil. And we're actually going to try something a little bit out of the ordinary for us. In our previous videos, we talked about how we always want to line everything with paper.
Yeah, so we always have lined these with freezer paper. The only times we haven't is when we were testing to see whether it was easy to get them out. So we're going to try and use sodium lactate to help us get these out of these pipes without using freezer paper. We are also doing a square mold, which doesn't need to be lined, just so that we have two variations for the soap.
So with the sodium lactate, it should release the soap theoretically from the molds without any muss or fuss. Again, this is us testing to see if that's true. And we're using the square mold today because we want to try doing a pencil line. So you can use a variety of powders to make a pencil line, like cocoa powder, elkanet powder. Today we're actually going to use activated charcoal, and we're just going to sift it over top. And you'll see it later in the video how you would make a pencil line in your soap, but you can only do that in a square mold.
Yeah, so hopefully this turns out well. We don't have distilled water, we're making our own type, and we are using sodium lactate to see if this works for the mold. So it's kind of a tester video this time to see how things go, and hopefully our fingers are crossed that we can do this.
Wish us luck.
Yeah, let's get started.
So here we're adding 2 tablespoons of distilled water and then our fresh basil leaves. And what we're going to do is we're going to hand blend it down, or you could use a food processor to kind of make it similar to like a pesto type consistency. And then you're going to just kind of filter out the leaves and you'll be left with the basil water. Here you can see that we're adding our coconut oil to our pot. Then we're adding our cocoa butter to the pot as well. We're measuring out our lye. And then our distilled water. Now remember, we didn't have enough distilled water, so what we did was we took our Brita water and then we boiled it and we added it in there to kind of be that distilled water. So now we're taking our lye and we're mixing it in with our distilled water. It did do a bit of a bubbling effect, which we don't normally see. And I think that's because we had put boiled water in there and you're adding lye and it's heating up and it's already hot. So it definitely did a little bit of a boil, which I don't really recommend because you have to be very careful with lye. As you can see, we are wearing gloves. So here we've just melted down those oils. And now we're gonna add in our olive oil. Here comes the sunflower oil. And then our sodium lactate we're measuring out. So now that the lye and our oils have reached roughly between 110 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, we've mixed them together with our hand blender. Here you can see we're adding the green clay plus our essential oils, and the essential oils that we've added was peppermint and basil. And we're just gonna mix that out until we got the consistency or it reached trace. We're gonna separate it out into so we have that light and dark green, and we're adding a bit more green clay plus our basil mixture that we had made before. So here we're pouring in the dark green that does contain that basil mixture. Here we've tried to add that the charcoal. And what happened was our sift was too wide, like too big of a sift, I guess. We needed finer sift, and it just kind of fell through. So we don't really recommend that. We do recommend having one that is definitely smaller. For whatever reason, it just did not work out well for us in that technique. So we're kind of alternating pours here. It didn't really matter. It just mixed right in. So we go back to the square mold and we just added more of the light mixture, and some of the charcoal did float to the top. We were kind of hoping it would stay towards the bottom, but we did have quite a bit on there. Again, I don't really recommend that technique with that sieve because it was just too wide of holes. It wasn't really sifting properly. So here we have what's left over. So we covered it with towels because when it cools down, it actually heats up first before it starts to cool down. And by covering it, you're avoiding cracks. You can see that we had frozen, so we put that round mold, the PVC pipe mold, in the freezer, and then we started to cut it up. The sodium lactate helped tremendously because it just kind of slipped right out and it made it super easy to get out of the mold. And here we're just cutting it up. Now some of the black did get on our hands, so that charcoal did get on the hands.
So we've gone and we've cut up our soap, and I'll have Lauren talk about what we did to make this come out of this mold without having to line it. So we decided to not line it anymore because we wanted clean edges, and we felt when we lined it we were getting a little bit of a ripply effect, and that's just kind of what we didn't want to go for. So Lauren, what did we put in it so that it came out easier?
So we put in about a tablespoon of lactic acid. So this was a doubled batch, so that was about 4 pounds of soap. So that's 1 tablespoon for 4 pounds. I don't think we ended up needing that much because what happened was when it basically just slid out of the tube after we froze it. And we froze it for about 6 hours before we took it out of the tube, was the inside of the tube was kind of greasy, and I think that might have been the lactic acid. There could have been something else going on with why it slid out so easily, so we're actually going to try another recipe again and add the lactic acid and see if it wasn't just a fluke with this recipe.
Yeah, so when we'd watched YouTube channels before, it had said that you could put it in the freezer and you could easily get it out and it'd slide out. Well, we found that that just didn't work for us. They forgot to throw in that the recipe used lactic acid, right? Lactic acid?
Yeah, lactic acid.
Or sodium lactate.
Oh wait, sodium lactate, that's right.
Sodium lactate, sorry, it was sodium lactate. So the recipes before, they didn't mention the sodium lactate. We've included it, froze it, and then it slid right out. And we've got some really nice edges. So then what we also did is we tried to do the little thin line in our soap by mixing the two different colors that we'd done. The problem with this, Lauren, would you like to say?
Yeah, so in a lot of books you'll see that they use kind of like a sifter to sift the line on, but our sifter was just, the holes were too big.
Yeah, we didn't have a fine sieve, so it just kind of fell through.
Yeah.
And it sort of does have a line, but it does come off on your fingers. So probably not the best to use to give to someone because it would come off. It is just the charcoal, so it's not harmful or anything, but it does leave your fingers with some black on it. Yeah, we're not too sold on the line yet. I don't know how it would feel when you use the soap, so I think we have to test it out, just even on these bars, see how we like it. What if it leaves like a black residue on our skin, we might not like to do that. But overall, I think we liked the recipe, the basil recipe that we did. We really liked it. It turned out well. It was nice and green, and incorporating that,
nice.
Yeah, incorporating that basil, that fresh basil was actually worked out quite well. So I was pleasantly surprised by that. Overall, the recipe was great. I think we'd definitely do this recipe again. And we're gonna try another one without lining and see how it goes. So we'll let you know in our next video. So if you've liked this video, obviously like and subscribe. Thank you.
See you next time.